Hey, what is up, headhunters, recruiters, search for owners, and anybody else listening? This is David Stephen Patterson. You may know me as DSP. This is the Headhunters Live with my beautiful brothers from other mothers. We have Chris Wessel right over here, and then even further, we have Neil Lebovitz, also known as the Boss. What is up, fellas?
How are you, my brother? I'm not known as the black. I hate that now because that's Springsteen, and I'm from New Jersey, and I don't have any ownership in that area whatsoever. Boss.
He's like, look behind me. This is not Jersey. This is not Jersey.
But you literally say, I don't want to be known as the boss, but then right there, you're like, Neil Lebovitz, the boss.
I mean, he's our boss.
I don't like to be known at that, but I'll just type it in. It's fake humility.
He is bossy. I mean.
He is the boss. Well, today we have a great show. We're going to be talking about recruiter productivity in the face of adversity. This actually is the second of a two-parter because last week we talked about recruiter resilience in the face of adversity. So we talked about mindset, but I'm a really big believer that if you're unproductive, if you're not productive, you're not getting your work done and you keep falling behind and falling behind and falling behind, well, no amount of mindset training is going to get you to where you need to be if you're not actually productive and actually doing the work. And so we're going to be talking about that today. But before we do so, before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, I want to let everybody know that's watching right now. We have quite a few. We're live on LinkedIn. We're live on the Headhunters and Executive Recruiter community on Facebook, and the Independent Recruiters and Headhunters Search for Owners group on Facebook as well. So do me a favor, wherever you're watching, if you're watching live, comment live so we know that you can hear us. If you're watching the replay, comment replay because we would love to see who is watching the show. And like it, love it, share it because we're growing rapidly and we would love to reach as many people as possible because we have a couple of really cool guests coming up. I don't know, should we even announce this on the show yet or should we
Absolutely, it's happening.
To get out of the bag?
We're not going to jinx anything, probably.
Well, we have the next month in November pretty much mapped out. We have the one and only Ben Mina, who just had a little baby here a few days ago. So congrats to him. So Ben Mina of the Elite Recruiter Podcast.
Yeah, Mini Mina.
I think it's Mena. I think it's
Mina.
Is it Mena? I think it's Mena.
Is it Mena? I would say Mina. Mena.
I guess we'll find out next week. Tune in next week to find out.
Yeah. And then we also have, and actually, we have Dan Fisk from Power Associates. I think the week after the 16th, right?
Yep.
And who else is it? Is it just Dan, or I think he's got a couple other people with him as well?
Dan and his partner Ryan Buono.
Okay, that's right. And that is going to be on the 16th. Thanksgiving, we're going to be off, and hopefully you guys are going to be off as well. And then the big one, though. The week after Thanksgiving, I think on the 30th, I believe we have. Who do we have, Neil? Because Neil, you're the architect behind this one.
As big as a podcast, I think in our industry has ever been. How's that? The only podcast people should turn into because no bigger name. Now, if this was not us, we'd be talking about Obama. We're talking about Steve Finkel, legendary author, trainer, back from the. This guy is going to do our show. He's going to do two. And he picked us as one, and I'm so excited. Steve Finkel, and we could talk about that. This isn't really for the show, but I'm shocked how many people out there know him. Still, because he's older than me.
Yeah,
he's a legend. Yeah.
Well, here's the crazy thing. So he wrote that book, which was kind of a pillar to our industry, Breakthrough Recruiting, and then he came out with his 2.0 version, Breakthrough 2.0. And here's the crazy thing. Oh, there, he's got it. Actually, and I'm waiting on. I should have a signed copy coming to me.
Yeah, sign, show the signature. That's the best part. I was like a kid when I got this signature.
I was like, oh my god. I'm like, he wrote it to me and everything. But
well,
it's in the mail. It's in the mail. I'm sure.
I never really heard much of Steve Finkel. I mean, I heard a lot about Steve Finkel coming up in the business, and I read the original book. In fact, I still have it on my bookshelf in my bedroom. But funny thing is, last couple of years I didn't really hear much until over the last year. I started seeing people posting the picture of his new book in the group. You never see that with other books in our groups. If I start seeing one post, another post, another post, another post. which is really amazing. So yeah, so we're pretty excited to have him on the show. We're excited.
And I posted a couple little posts in the group. It's just some of you have seen some of this, and I was shocked. I literally, we were talking. I'm like, I had to do it because to me, this guy was as big as a name gets, and why not cold call? And we had some good story, and that excitement, by the way, of hearing back from him, it's amazing. We all have that feeling. But I'm shocked at how many people, and even I think they're more older, but even the younger ones know him. The buzz in there. And again, our groups aren't young. If we want to go to some of the others, we have a really good mix. But I'm so excited. Stay tuned for that show. We're having a pre-show, or we're having our pre-conference on Friday. So we're really excited. And come, because Steve is he wants to talk to you. He wants to he's got a lot he wants to talk, but he wants to hear from you. So we'll have live Q&A. You get to talk to Steve Finkel. We'll keep the show going on as long as maybe we extend a little.
I'm not sure if we're live in one of the groups right now. I was just looking at the Ursa one. I don't know if we're live in there. I think we're live in Perk. Just double checking.
Let me do a quick double check on my end, guys. We will see if we're live.
We send the link out to them so they can watch it.
Oh no, we are. We're live. Okay. We're live in Ursa. Yep, we are.
Oh, okay.
We are. So our assistant, Jaja, she's my assistant. She's actually in the green room. Jaja, just make sure we'll have our assistant post the link to the live in the groups under the original promo post. That way you guys can make sure you see it. Well, let's get into it, guys, because I'm sure a lot of these folks aren't here just to hear us jibber jabber. They're here to learn about productivity. Damn it, productivity, and this is really important because. Again, remember, last week we talked about mindset, and mindset will do you no good at all if you're just not productive, right? Because the thing that creates this sort of mindset issue for a lot of folks is either we're not billing or things going wrong in our business or whatever. Things seem out of control. The more that you can bring things into control, the better. And so I want to talk about that. There's some things I want to talk about with regard to productivity. I know that Chris and Neil have their own takes on it as well. But I'm curious, guys, in your experience, let's say, Chris, let me ask you this, because this actually really applies to you. You're still recruiting in there. You're still in the hunt. How do you view productivity, right? Especially when times are hard. Like, how do you approach it?
Sure. And I'd like to echo your point as far as you could have the right mindset, but if you're not productive, it doesn't, you could have sheer will alone does not get you through this. Right. And then people are like, I'll just outwork everybody. I'll make more calls, but just listen, if you're calling the wrong people or you're doing the wrong things, you can quickly go broke being super busy in this business. Right. And, one of the things that over time, I started refining over the almost 20 years of my career, my approach to my day to try to be more and more efficient. I think a lot of us can try to strive for that, especially after we've been doing this for a bit. And I found that it really helps you weather thinner times because there's, listen, like you mentioned in your post promoting this, when things are going good, you're shooting fish in a barrel. It's easy to fill jobs. There's a lot to choose from, but when there's less to choose from out there, there's still a lot of things that can keep you busy that aren't doing anything, right? So I think that really refining your practice to be as efficient as possible in terms of going after the right kind of work and respecting your own time is going to go a long way, because in the tighter times, it'll keep you afloat. In the better times, it'll frankly make you even more money because you'll spend your time on the best stuff, right? You'll be still top grading what's out there. So, I mean, we can go into more detail specifically over the course of this hour or so, but a lot of recruiters just don't respect their own time and just spin their wheels on stuff. And listen, if you go out and get two really good job orders, well qualified, either they're on an engagement or they're on exclusive, and that's what you're working the hell out of on your solo desk, and you say they're mid-level jobs and $15,000 each, right? And so that ended up, maybe that made you $30,000 that month. Or you could work on you could get it 15 or 20 job orders that are marginally qualified, spin your wheels way more, maybe close one of them, maybe close none of them. Who was smarter there, right? You're going to spend less time on the first situation. And listen, it's not hard to get job orders even now. It's just that a lot more of them are not well qualified. So I'll get off my soapbox for a second, but that's kind of like my thought process to it is, if you, what is it, like iron sharpens iron or whatever, like the tough times help you like really figure out, like when I had a tech staffing business for about 10 years that was really booming in the first few years. And we were like printing money and it was great. We never really looked at our expenses that closely. We didn't look at a lot of stuff that closely. And then when a downturn came, it just was a punch in the face, right? So we had to reevaluate the whole business, what we're spending our time on, what we're spending our money on, et cetera. And what was amazing was not only did that carry us through a thin time, but then when the market turned again, we were more profitable than ever because we had a firm understanding of what works.
You know what?
100%.
It's the age-old adage, and this is what last week when we were talking about, down times or a recession or you're planning. And I love the water analogy, Chris, staying afloat, because you ride a wave on whatever's working for you. It doesn't mean it's the best or it's efficient. It's getting you what you want. You ride a wave of your success. And when things slow down, it uncovers your weakness in a good way. That's what you learn. And that's what it uncovers your weaknesses. And if you're good and you learn it, and those of you going through your first time, it's where you learn it. Now it's not working. Why? Because I wasn't. Now it makes you do these other things. And that's why I love that analogy, because now there's the wave's no longer there. So are you going to drown and you're going to flap in that sand, or you're going to now have to look at other things that make you better? So we're saying the same thing, different analogy, right?
Oh yeah. Well, so one thing I want to talk about, and what you guys said is right. I mean, it really is. This business goes in waves, obviously, and you need to, regardless if you're in a trough, if you're on a crest, you need to be able to be in control of it, because otherwise, in a good market, you close deals despite all the mistakes that you make. In a bad market, you need to be
no margin for error.
There's no margin for error. Well, I think this is really relevant now, because for a lot of folks, they're about to go to into their annual planning. Now, I know for a lot of folks, their annual planning is basically on December 30th, because 31st, they're getting ready to go party on December 30th. They put together a really quick plan, and then they go party on the 31st.
People
and on
are
the first, they wake up
hungover. Planning, but they're great at that planning. David, I love that you just said that. So true. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You made me laugh.
Oh, yeah, but it's 100% true. And then your first day of the new year, what do? You start off hungover. You know what I mean? And so it's a bad way to go. So I think for a lot of folks, starting your planning now is important. But what I want to introduce you to something that I talk about in a couple of my programs, which are you've got of course, your yearly plan. But I like to talk about on a more tactical level. To make sure that you're staying the course, because for most people, you forget about your annual plan by February, right? But I would say there's a thing called strategic quarterlies, tactical weeklies, and bridging monthlies. So I want to talk about this. It's a really cool concept that I like, and it really helps to chunk up your year in manageable chunks, so that then you can execute on this in the service of your larger plan. So I'll keep it pretty simple. Basically, it's something like this. So the thing to keep in mind is that, this all bridges the gap between basically what people say they want to do and what they actually do, because that is the silent killer, right? So what you want to be thinking about first off is on your yearly plan. So to kill this reality gap, we're basically really piss poor long-term plan. It's very hard for us to follow a plan for an entire year. So I learned this concept a few years back when I read, I forget the exact name of the book, but it's something like the 12-week year, 13-week year, something like that. But look at your quarter and consider that your yearly plan, if you will. I mean, so create your annual plan, but instead of planning for the year and sticking to that, once you do your yearly plan, go and plan your quarterly plan. You got 12 weeks any quarter, roughly. Maybe your 13th week could be more of a recharge and then additional planning, but focus on quarters, because and think of every week as a month, because the more that you can accomplish quickly, like the better your decision making is going to be, right? And you'll know more ideally what's going on in your practice is key. So that is your strategic quarterly. Now, if we're going to go down to the tactical side on a weekly basis, your weekly basis is your tactical plan. So every Sunday, right? Instead of eating wings, drinking beer, and watching football and wasting your Sunday, instead go and plan out your week, because the week is one on Sunday, right? Plan out your week and know what in service of your quarterly goal. Okay, now we know for that 1 week what you need to do. Maybe focus on 1 or 2 or maybe 3 main things total, right? But create your weekly plan, what you want to accomplish for that week. That is your weekly plan. And then what a bridging monthly is this is the bridge between your weekly and quarterly, meaning every month you review your last 4 weeks, right? Do you need to adjust what you're doing in order to hit your quarterly plan? And this is also when you want to check your finances. So you're going to be checking your P&L, right? Most people only check their P&L in April for obvious reasons, but you want to check your P&L, your cash flow statement. Make sure all your finances are in order. And that's really more of a monthly plan. And I call that the bridging monthly because that's the bridge between your tactical weekly and your strategic quarterly. That's how I like to break it up. It's a lot of planning, but what it does is it breaks everything up in manageable chunks, because otherwise, when you look at your plan for an entire year, it's almost impossible to figure out how you're going to do it versus
the best laid plans,
quarter,
right, David?
month.
I keep thinking that when you're saying it, the best laid plans of mice and men, right? Robert Burns, that quote, that's what it reminds me of. That's why that works so well.
That's right.
So
100%.
On the planning, if I could take that like another layer down before we move on to the next point, if someone's looking at watching this and they're thinking, and I would have thought this way years ago, okay, my plan is I'm going to do 100 cold calls a day and I'm going to send 10,000 emails and all this other stuff. Understand that just because you have like a plan doesn't mean that it's a good plan. So you got like, if times are tight and not as much good opportunity is out there, you can't waste your effort on spamming a bunch of people with garbage like emails. You can't afford to not personalize some of your outreach. You got to understand, like, look back at your previous year, like, where did your business come from? So like that plan should include things like not just outreach in general, but how much like new, like completely cold outreach, how much is revisiting like past clients, existing relationships. Look through your LinkedIn. How many people did you place somewhere or hire for that are now at other companies? Maybe that's a pathway in those companies. And just like, you can't take this brute force approach of just hammering out a ton of emails or just making calls for the sake of making calls. The planning should include categories of, and yours probably does, I'm just taking this another step. The actual activities should be fairly strategic in nature that are in this plan, because those are the ones that are going to yield the most results versus just kind of some people, their plan is I sent 100 messages on LinkedIn today, but they didn't really do anything.
Right. Mm-hmm. And is that the plan? Like David's talking about, the plan is everything. It's these things you opened up with. What haven't you been doing that now is being uncovered? I'm going to get more into social media. I'm going to work more on my brand. I'm going to work more on recruiting people. I'm going to work more on the personal, whatever it is. That's part of the planning, not just 100 calls like you're saying. What's the plan? And what later on, I love this topic because I did so much professional speaking on a topic. My favorite topic, I called it the time chasm. And at the end, I just want to summarize some of these things we're talking about. But I love this. I mean, we're dead on.
Wait a minute. I mean, time chasm as in chasm like a big gap between two land masses, or time gasm?
Yeah.
As in a sudden release of...
Can it be both?
Not gasm. Not gasm.
Okay.
I like that though. I'm gonna do that. Something gasm. That's a good.
Is that like when you get your time back or something, or you get some extra time in a day?
Yeah. Well, it's just like
comes at you all at once.
I'll get into it later, but it's everything you're talking about. It's the planning. It's the important things that never get done because you're distracted by all the things that are in your face that make you feel
reactive,
busy, which is everything you're talking about. I'll get into that later. I love this. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, so actually, I was going to talk about daily planning, but you know what? Actually, we mentioned that I want to go further on that. So, people tend to emergency scan, right? So it's the reason why we're in our inbox all the time, because we're in our inbox. We don't know what to do. We're kind of like, we know we have a lot to do, but we're unfocused. And so we're looking for the next, email comes from a client. Boom. All right. I'm going to work on that. Email comes from a candidate. Boom. I'll go work on that. And so you're letting your day you're letting circumstances and chance dictate your day instead of you dictating your day. And so don't emergency scan. And so what I would do to help with that, a few things I would do to ensure that that you dictate the day, not the other way around. So first off, obviously daily plan, just like Chris said, plan out 100 calls for the next day isn't really a plan at all. It's just a call list, right? So think about, for anybody, we're not 9 to 5 fellas, right? Anybody listening to this, we're probably not 9 to 5. We live the business, and we live the business, and we work the business, and our business is kind of integrated into our personal lives. I mean, who doesn't take a call from a client on a weekend if you're about to close a deal, right? Or who doesn't, or planning on Sunday, things that an accountant who works 9 to 5 wouldn't do. That's why I make the big bucks. So with that in mind, I also want you to think about personal productivity, because your personal life and your work life integrate. And if you have problems in your personal life, it'll bleed over into the business, and business life will bleed over. Business problems will bleed over into your personal life. So what I recommend is getting a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen Greer, I think his name is, not the In Living Color guy, but
I was just gonna say,
yeah.
Well, I guess an interesting second career for him.
But it's it's called Getting Things Done. It's called and it's a productivity system. I won't go into a lot of the details here, but it's a very simple productivity system where you use a project management tool like Asana. I know you use Asana.
Trello,
I use Trello. OmniFocus is one I used to use. That's Mac based. But basically, what you do is anything that you needs to be done, whether personal, business, whatever it is, put it into your inbox, because if you have it rattling around in your head, you'll forget about it and it'll stress you out. Put it into an inbox, and every day, or maybe every couple of days, you process that inbox. Take that task. If you be done in less than 2 minutes, you knock it out right then. If it takes more than 2 minutes, what you'll do is you'll put it off into maybe a project or maybe a queue for maybe a later date. But what it is you create a system where, and I'm not even doing it justice. You have to actually look at the system itself, and read about it. But you create a system whereby it works as a second brain, works as knowledge storage, works as project management, works as task management. And what happens is, if you trust this system, put everything into this, it'll free up your mental bandwidth to focus on the important things you need to focus on that day. And what I found is that from just a purely tactical day-to-day level, having some sort of getting things done system, again, you can use ClickUp, Asana, Trello, there's tons of different software out there to help you do this. It'll make a big difference in your life, both your personal and your business life. I mean, who hasn't forgotten a birthday? Who hasn't forgotten to pick up milk after work and your wife asked you to pick it up, or forgot to do a project for your wife or for your kid, or whatever it is, right? All these little things add up. And if you consistently forgetting things, consistently stressed out, consistently trying to you feel like you're behind the 8 ball, well, this will help you get out from under the 8 ball, right? So I think a day-to-day personal productivity system is the way to go. So Getting Things Done, go read the book. It's amazing, and go implement the system. It'll make a big change in your life. Big change.
And so I think this is a good time before we get off of planning too. Here's what's happening. Here's how I sum up everything we're talking about in terms of what we've all said, is that people are reactionary, and it's really easy to be busy. And what Chris opened up with, when you're busy, it makes you feel like you're productive, and it's not. You're busy. Doesn't mean anything. What are you busy with? You're busy with the things that come to you. That's what happens. Distractions, interruptions, issues, candidates, client, this, whatever. The day consumes you. If you look at everything you need to do, this is the way I used to lay it out. Picture a regular good old quadrant, right? Remember those quadrants in high school? On the horizontal axis, you have the importance, okay? From the
Important
left
versus urgent.
And then the top one is importance, and then urgency. Importance is how important it is to you. How important it is. Everything we've been talking about, that's going to be on those right 2 quadrants. On the top one is its urgency. That means urgency doesn't mean importance and time management. Urgency means the need to in your face. It's buzzing. It's beeping. It's at you. It's now. Doesn't mean it's important. We spent so much time on now stuff that's not important. It wasn't your plan. You didn't do one damn thing you said you were going to do this month that you were doing last month. You didn't get to it because it wasn't in your face. So what happens is you need to focus on the important things. Those are the top, those right 2 quadrants. The ones that are in your face are important. You don't have to you don't need training on that.
And in my
Right.
last firm, my partner and I used to ask each other all the time, like when something would pop up, we'd be like, is this important or urgent? Like I remember
Yeah.
learning
Now,
that a while
this
back,
one's
and it
the
was a
opposite
good
of what I
litmus
said.
test.
Yeah. This is great. Who put this up? I did the opposite. Let's use
That was
this
me.
one.
Yeah, I happen to have it,
No,
so
it's
I
the same
threw it up.
exact thing. It's the same exact thing. David uses this. So I'm simply saying we want to focus on 1 and 2, right? And column 1 is easy. 2 is the wow moment. That's what they're all talking about. I love the visual. Thank you. I would have created this. This is what you don't do, because you need to make that stuff. You need to plan that stuff to happen. You need to say, did I do it or did I not do it? Make yourself accountable, because it will never happen. And that's the time chasm.
Well, and so think about this. So
Ungasm.
one thing that helps enable that, like, so instead of being inbox driven, where you wake up and the first thing you do is just respond, like one thing I found was helpful in terms of making sure that I focused on the important was we can overcorrect and have too many important things, right? We could have a whole big long list of important things. I have found over the years that if I am like, okay, today I have like 2 or 3 important things that need to get done. Those get done at all costs, at the cost of everything urgent, no matter what. If you try to make it 10 things, I guarantee you're going to fail. 2 or 3 things, I got to get this offer secured. I got this interview set up. I got to get this meeting done. I got to, whatever it is, that day, it's going to be different every day. 2 or 3 things, that's it. And you have to be relentless until those things are done, and everything else has to wait.
Yep.
Well, now,
I love it.
so speaking of this, now, if you guys heard of, I'm sure you guys heard of this, but the old concept that's been in our industry for decades, but golden hours or platinum hours, whatever you want to call it, but where you've got your, I'm going to make calls for this hour. Don't
your
disturb
money
me
hours
unless
or
I
whatever.
fire. Yeah, money hours. Well,
Whatever.
and so while those are important, I think everybody should do those. But I think on a broader scale, use that same concept. In addition to using that for your phone time or what have you, take that same concept and use that for what we call deep work in the morning. So what I found is that, well, actually I haven't found this, but this is something I've learned a lot about over the last few years as I'm trying to deal with my own productivity, because I'm not, Chris, as you said, you think you can conquer the world just through willpower and grit and determination, muscle things through. But the older you get, the more humble you are and the more you realize your limitations, right? So one thing that helped me out a lot was a concept called done by 10:30. Now, it could be 10, 9:30, 11, whatever it is. But just the general concept is that your mental energy, your mental bandwidth is at its peak early in the morning, and it wanes throughout the day. It's why everybody that wants to write the great American novel, and they think, well, I'll do it after work, it never gets done. And it's also the reason why at night is when you're most likely to eat junk food, eat ice cream, do bad things, drink beer. You should be drinking beer. Whatever those things are, your willpower and your mental bandwidth is at least, even if you're a night owl, it's still simple biology. The best thing you could do, it's kind of like eating a frog concept we talked about last week, where if you do the hardest thing in the morning, like eat a frog, the rest of the day is that much easier. Well, think about your things that you need to get done, whether it be whatever it could be a project, working on a retained search, whatever it is. Create blocks of time, maybe 50 minutes, then a 10-minute break, and have maybe 2 of those in the morning. So start work at 8. Maybe you run from 8 to 9, and then from 9 to 10, a 50-minute time block with a 10-minute break in between, where you don't take calls, you don't even check your email, you don't do anything except for the specific work that you have to accomplish. Then maybe it's creating your new website, whatever it is. And so what you'll find is that you can actually get over a day's work of really important work done in those 2 hours with no distractions. And then by 10 or 10:30, you've got the rest of the day to, check your email, make your phone calls, talk to clients, talk to whatever it is. But reserve this first couple of hours for this deep work, right? And that I think will help a lot in terms of just getting those important tasks done.
And there's discipline required in doing that, right? So think about this: like, we all have, a lot of us watching this are like the 3 of us, where you have control over our schedules. If we want, if you were in a meeting with a client or a prospect, and you had your phone not in front of you, and you were sitting down talking with them for an hour, like, you wouldn't be checking your email, right? So you have to enforce these boundaries on yourself. So when it's hard to do, because when you say it's important, like David said, but it's hard to do, and we acknowledge that, because if you're going to say, okay, I'm going to block out a half hour or an hour, nothing too long, or you'll go into a full blown panic. It's easy, but it's hard to do. But just remember, like if you were in something else, like if you were, unavailable for whatever reason, like you wouldn't be checking your email. Don't check it just because you can click it and open it up. Enforce those boundaries on yourself to do what David's talking about. And again, we know the temptation's there, and it's quick and it's simple, but listen, just treat it like if you were unavailable because you were in a meeting or doing an interview or something, you wouldn't be checking those messages.
Nothing is so important that it can't wait a couple hours, usually.
David, what you said, I want to talk about what you just said before we move on, because I got goosebumps. Why? David and I never talked about this before. What David just said, everyone listening, is the most profound business advice I have ever received in my life. It has changed my life. Listen to what he just said. It echoed what I was taught when I went to Penn State. I went to a course that changed my life. It's what David just said. It changed my entire trajectory, what David just said. Yes, I was taught in college, you had all this. How do I get A's? How do I date my girl? How do I get in the fraternity? My parents weren't going to pay for it if I didn't get straight A's. I went to the set. That was it. Get your day done. Then I became a machine. I learned how to just make those important things in that quadrant, focus on them at all distractions. And they told me all those same things David did. I remember the quotes. The average productivity of the American person is 23%. All right. When you do what David did, you can be 80, 90, 100% productive. You don't need to be. What if you want to be 50% productive, twice as everyone else? To David's point, she was saying, do that and leave at 2 o'clock if you want to. Leave at 1. So David nailed it. I'm just going to say, don't let that comment that to me changed my life. Okay. And I took what you said and I dug into it. So anyone out there that gets what he's saying there, I'm telling you, it could change your life. That's how big it is for mine. And I don't say that, right? I could say that as a trainer in my life. And that's the one. That's the one. Anyone that's known me in my career, that's the story. And I never told David about that. So I love that, David.
That's pretty cool. Well, and thing is too, Neil, and you mentioned this when you were a young man at Penn State. You're trying to get good grades, you're trying to pay for school, you're trying to meet girls. So it's not just business or work related things. I mean, like in your case,
get stuff done.
Girls, getting
the stuff done that you normally won't do because you get distracted by everything else, and you don't do what you said was important to begin with. Period.
Exactly. Like you could be out of shape. So one of your quarterly goals could be you have a business goal, you can have a personal fitness goal. So maybe one of those time slots could be working out. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily a business goal. It's just whatever is really important to you. That's extremely important. Knock that out first thing in the morning. And yeah, just like Chris said, no distractions. Don't be in your email. No notifications. Turn off your cell phone. Tell your family that do not disturb me unless there is a fire. And even then, only until the flames are about to engulf the house. I mean, literally do not disturb me. And I will be pissed off.
Can I add this? Because you nailed it. I'm sorry. You're just making me think of all these amazing training things. When I implemented this in my businesses and when I was on my rise, I would have this is why those blocks are so brilliant that everyone's always heard about, right? That's why they're brilliant. And I would have that non-time. Everyone knew when I got in there, you don't come into don't bother me until 9:30. Unless it's an emergency. Not that I was so available. I didn't have high turnover. They knew, and I was programming everyone. This is focus. This is my thing. I wasn't going to lose what I did in college and my career just because I became management. And other people that got really good adopted that. So anyway, David, I love
with this type of work that a lot of the people that are watching do, and that I do every day, and that you guys have all been involved in at some point. There's a tremendous amount of freedom. But with that freedom comes a lot of personal responsibility and personal accountability, right? So a lot of people prefer to take direction, and that's why they are led by their inboxes. They're led by being reactive, or they were more comfortable in their job where a boss told them what the priority was for the day, or told them what was on their schedule. Like if you go work for a lot of places you work, your bosses or whoever are putting things on your calendar, like they're directing your day. I think the hardest part for a lot of people, and I know it was for me at one point, was you are directing your day. So it's easy for you to blow yourself off. It's easy for you to say, like, just abandon your plan and just go do something else. It takes a tremendous amount of of discipline. I think even more so than like working out or anything like that, to keep like these kinds of boundaries. It's on. Listen, you wanted the freedom, you wanted the potential. This is the cost. This is the price of it.
Yeah, where they say freedom isn't free, right? It's not. It's not just about America, right? It's also about in our own lives. If we have freedom, we need to pay the cost to be the boss, right? As that saying goes.
You get the freedom to go completely broke because you're doing all the wrong things.
Exactly, and that's so important. And I think and something else I want to further elaborate on with regard to those time blocks. Speaking of time blocks, and this is a little bit of a minor thing, but it really works for me very, very well. Remember I said before about you got a time block of 15 minutes, take a 10-minute break. Well, that's based off of the Pomodoro technique. Now, the Pomodoro technique in productivity, they people or productivity experts recommend 30-minute blocks, 25 minutes of working, and a 5-minute break where you literally get up from your chair, go outside, get some sun, get some fresh air, recharge, and come back. And you'll will get more work done because you're less distracted and you're able to focus. I like to do 50 and 10 because I can focus for a good 50 minutes, no problem at all. And I don't like to stop what I'm doing midway through, go take a break when I just want to push through, but I'll do a 50-minute work block, take a 10-minute break, go outside and walk around, come back, and I feel great. And I'm ready to, it's a reward. And so there's little things. And so, so what I do is I have this, I've got this hourglass, right? And it's a 25-minute hourglass. So there's 25-minute block. So I'll use this. I use it twice. It'll go all the way down, and then I turn it over again, another 25 minutes. I do 2, then I go on a break. Has these little metal filings in here so I can hear it as it's going down.
You hear time slipping away.
That's like the Wicked Witch of the West. Remember that one? Anytime I see an hourglass, I freak out still from the Wicked Witch of the West scene when she had Dorothy. It scared the daylights out of me then. I remember at like 4 years old seeing that face, and I was so scared. All right, I was 4. Anyway, sorry. You just have PTSD, David.
Well, I'll tell you what. And what's cool about this little hourglass? I forget the name of it. If I remember the name, I bought it a few years ago. I'll put it in the comments section. The really cool thing about this, because these are iron filings, I got this little magnetic stopper. So if I need to take a little quick break and I don't want to lose the time, I put this in here and it stops the flow because it's a magnet. And I take it off, and the flow starts again. And so, yeah, it's pretty neat. So I'll try to remember the name of it.
Shouldn't is an hourglass supposed to last an hour timed with the sand, or can it be any increment? Like, is it exactly 15 minutes? Aren't they calibrated for that? Like, I'm being serious.
So this is specifically meant for working a 25-minute block. So it's actually meant for productivity. So it's actually built.
Right?
It's actually
so that it's scientifically timed by the sand or whatever, right? So it's exactly 25 minutes, right? That's how they make them.
Exactly 25. Yep. And I do 2 of those, then I can go on a break. Basically, that's pretty neat. Yeah. So time blocking helps. And then what I'll also do is I'll listen to. I've got these little Bose headphones, and so while I'm doing that, I'm listening to brain.fm, which basically is it's music meant for working. So there's music that helps you be more creative, music that helps you do a lot of deep work, and so I listen to that while I have this on. I'm completely focused, listen to my music, and so that keeps me productive. So time blocks with the music, and that helps quite a bit. So another little productivity tip, and there's one other productivity tip I want to give as well. And this seems like a minor thing, but in recruiting, we're always typing all the time. I'm like, for years I'm doing this. So I have carpal tunnel, right? I've had it. It comes and goes. It's not really bad, but I still feel it because I'm doing this all day long. I've been doing it for over a couple decades. So one thing that's been a big boon for me is dictation. Now, when I send out emails, 90% of any of the emails I send out or anything I write is all dictated. I've got my microphone. I got my Mac. As long as I speak clearly, I just dictate. I need to dictate, make a couple corrections, send the email. And that saves me Gosh, I mean, maybe I might write an email in a tenth of the time it would take me to normally type it, especially if it's a long email. So another little productivity tip: get some sort of dictation, either software if your computer doesn't have it, or if you're on a Mac, it has a built-in dictation feature, which I use. And
Yeah,
it's
be
really,
careful
really good.
though. I use it for dating sites, and I'm not no joke. I do dictate, and I was telling a girl that I loved her tats. Let's just say it didn't dictate correctly, and it didn't end up in a second date.
Well, you
Tats, I
sent me
meant
a
tats.
message like last week or
Oh,
the week
yeah.
before, and you called me a I think it was a pervert trainer, or something like that, and it was a dictation error. It's true, I am
You
a
are
pervert trainer,
right.
but I know you didn't mean to say that.
Exactly. So I get scared, but I love it. You're dead on. Yeah, you got to be careful. Corey. Read it. Read your
Pervert
dictation. I'm
trainer.
joking. It's a
Yep.
true one about
Yeah.
the tattoo. I should have said tattoo. I said you have great tats, and it came out with the wrong letter. And she was like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh my god, I did not mean that. That's not what I
Yeah.
meant. I would never write that."
Yeah, but I'll tell
Sorry.
you what, but that is huge. And so, so there's the dictation piece of it. So guys, what other productivity? Let's say on a day-to-day basis. So let's talk tactical, right? So on a day-to-day basis, we talked about done by 10:30, staying out of your email until you do your deep work. We talked about using things like dictation, time blocks,
I gotta
using
go.
music to focus.
Yeah, so keep going. What else?
Oh, I thought you
this
said
is
I thought
amazing.
you said it.
No,
Neil.
Oh, yeah, you got it,
Oh, well, I mean, the one big one, it's all the same, right? So before we get off the topic, here's the thing, right? We're reactive as people. We like to please. We love to be interrupted, and we allow it. So the next time someone says you got a second, I want you to think about that one. Next time someone says you got a minute, the answer is no. Okay? That's the trick. Okay? How do you? Especially if you're how? What? So, hi, I called. You got a minute? Well, no, I was about to do one of those important things that are important to my plan that I haven't been doing because I've been distracted. I'm about to do, but I'll stop to take your call now. No. How important? What's it about?
Yeah.
When can I call you? That's the biggest trick. And as a manager, stop pleasing people so much because you're killing yourself.
And
That's my
don't
tip.
have and unless it's like genuinely important and urgent, I generally don't I wait to respond to most emails or messages. And sometimes it's because it's a message where I'm like, what it says is not making me happy. So I got to gather my thoughts. Sometimes it's just a matter of like, listen, if you're trying to have some productivity or whatever, if you're responding to messages at all times from clients, candidates, partners, etc., you're training people to say like, okay, I'm available. You're training them to expect like immediate response from you. And in some cases, immediate response is warranted, but in most cases, it's not necessary. Listen, most business situations, if you get back to somebody in the same day or within an hour or two, people understand like it undermines some of your credibility, because if you're that responsive, like you don't have anything better to do, obviously. Like, you know, if you messaged the CEO of one of your clients and they got back to you a little bit later in the day, you wouldn't think anything of it. But if that same person messages you and every single time they contact you, you get back to them within moments because you're like, oh, it's a client, I gotta get back to him. I gotta get back to him. Do you understand like the tone that you're setting and the kind of deferential? And recruiters do this. We're all like whatever you need, we're people pleasers. But like the other thing is then that doesn't buy you any time for when you do need some time to like make a response. Or if they're like, oh, listen, how many of us have been in that situation where you had, I don't know, some candidate interview and they're like, do you have anybody else? And then you were like, no. Maybe if you get back to them in a few hours, maybe you might be like, oh, well, there is one other person you could consider or whatever. Like buy yourself some time to be able to react to situations, and also don't paint the picture that you are like completely someone's lapdog and have nothing better to do than to respond to them immediately all the time.
100%. Well, you know, and I'll tell you what, something that will help with that, or at least help with everything, is I call it a user interface. So a user interface. One of the great things about Apple, I know a lot of Android folks out there hate Apple, but at the end of the day, Apple is so successful because it's simple, right? It's very simple to use. It's very intuitive. It's very complex under the skin, but above the skin, it's relatively simple. And it makes it again easy to use, easy to navigate, and there's less friction. So imagine in your business if you had a user interface, meaning you had some sort of system or something, some sort of resource, and I'll get into that in a second, that can do a lot of the maybe mundane technical things, like maybe, for example, setting up messaging sequences for your recruiting and marketing campaigns, keeping track of all your prospects, keeping track of who's getting what messages, keeping track of your AR, payroll, keeping track of your emails, being in your email first thing in the morning and getting rid of all the emails that you don't want to see, getting rid of all those, and maybe even responding to emails on your behalf. Well, that's a VA. One of the best ways to be productive, one of the biggest bangs for your buck, is to get a virtual assistant who, and you can get them from in America or the Philippines if you want to go a little cheaper, but get a really good VA to handle all those little things that, I don't want to say low value because they're still very valuable, but they're tasks better meant for somebody else. So you can focus on closing deals, building relationships, account management, or whatever it is you need to do. Or if you're a search firm owner, managing everybody else, making sure that the company as a whole is getting to where they need to be. So getting a VA, more than getting a recruiter, more than anything else, one of the best things you could ever do for your productivity is to get a really strong VA and using them as your user interface, right? Because then you've got a simplified version of your business, almost like an iPhone, right? That's relatively easy to use, and it's the VAs handling all the very complex, minute details behind the scenes, so you can focus on being the CEO of your practice. Virtual assistant,
and that's something that definitely you have to understand how to best utilize one, just like any person or any process or anything. And I should probably start sharing this on the show soon. I've been actually part of a VA business for about 1.5 years as well. I've been using one for 6 years myself, but there's some recruiters that I've been providing VAs to and helping them get ramped up on this. And maybe next week or whatever, I could share a link, because we have on our website, I'm on the site, but there isn't like a booking link for me. And if any recruiters are planning on using a VA, it's probably best if we talk as opposed to another member of our team. But there's a lot to think about when you go into that, for sure. And it definitely has to be properly managed. And it definitely, you can't, one thing you have to know is
show on that, honestly.
We can, yeah.
Really good at it. And people, and we'll digress with it. David's great at it too. I know, because David and I do a lot of sub projects, and he uses so many VAs. They're amazing. So I think it'll really, I want to use more of them too. So to pick your brains on how you've been using, and you guys really have now, that's a great topic. Right.
That's a good point. Other thing I'll say on that topic, with the VA, is that also goes back to where David was talking about how personal productivity overlaps with like personal needs. And because when you're running a business and it's just you, like everything is intertwined. And let me tell you, like, you use a VA not just for the business stuff, for the personal stuff too. And if that removes hours of your time, then we could go further into detail, but this overlaps with like all of those concepts big time.
Yeah,
and it's something that people cut. And it's something that people cut or don't think about when times are tight and lean. But let me tell you, that couple $1,000s a month you're spending on that person, it's counterintuitive to say, okay, well, I'm experiencing kind of tough times, I don't want to spend more money. I get that, right? But that if you're using that resource properly, that is money very well spent. That will pay for itself over. Yes.
100%. So we have 3 on our YouTube channel said, I call it a user interface. That's already a thing. You need a new word for your method. So one thing I will say, I don't think because, first of all, not a method. I don't think just because Apple has a user interface means no one else in the world can use the word user interface or call it a method. So I'm not quite sure.
There's actually a whole profession, UI UX, that uses that term.
Yeah. It's like, you know what? Marketable candidate's already a thing. You got to call it a new thing because somebody else said that thing. That's gonna anyway. That's kind of a weird comment.
It should be an acronym, like candidates under new. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to do an acronym. Sorry.
I got to get you a little bit, but yeah, get a virtual assistant, or again, a user interface, quote unquote, is a great way to think about using a virtual assistant. Now, Now, that said, I will tell you on a more practical level, if you use a VA in the US, so there are VAs here in the US that you can use them for 10, 20 hours a week or whatever. And there's lots of VAs. This is actually how I started. I used a VA in the US, and I was one of 3 clients with her, and she worked 40 hours a week. And I got part of that 40 hours because I didn't have enough work for a full 40. But then I actually started hiring out of the Philippines. And for those folks who use overseas VAs, you'll find it can be hard to find a good VA. But what I found, of all the different countries I've used, the Philippines, they're a largely college educated society. The great English skills. They'll work your shift. They're typically like really hard workers, very intelligent, because the virtual assistant community down there is really large. They consider it a great profession that pays really, really well. So there's actually a lot of competition to be a VA in the Philippines. So if you could find a great VA in the Philippines, it might cost you, if you use a service, it might cost you about $1,500 per month. If you go to one individually, you might pay more like $600-700 per month US dollars. But what I would say is, if you and I'll recommend this person, if you want a great VA service, reach out to a company called VA Staffer, VAstaffer.com. My buddy Jeff Hunter runs that company. I've used several VAs from him. I also have hired some of my own. But VA Staffer, great place. I'm not affiliated in any way, shape, or form. I just have been a customer there for a few years. Great service to use. But again, you can hire an American VA as well, but you want to save some money, you can hire somebody out of the Philippines. They do just as good work, sometimes even better, with less issues for a full 40 hours per week at a fraction of the cost. So hire in the Philippines. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, there's so much more I want to say about that too. So let's definitely table that. But as far as productivity goes, as far as productivity goes too, I think I have one comment I wanted to squeeze in that I think maybe to some extent overlaps with business development and whatnot. But listen, you got to spend your time on things that are actually going to return some investment or return on your investment, right? So like there are all different kinds of job orders, right? There are all kinds of search assignments. There are things that you could spin your wheels on, all the time. You could spend all week doing a ton of things and make absolutely no money, right? So I know this probably overlaps more with the discussion about like properly qualifying clients and that kind of thing. And there's not much I could do justice to it in a couple of minutes, but look at where you're spending your time, what customers are responsive, what customers are easiest to like work with in terms of realistic expectations, who are getting back to you. Look at where you're getting return in your day and look at it on a regular basis, reevaluate it, because you could have a really good plan and you gotta be talking to the right kinds of people, but you could also still be spending a lot of your time on like the wrong job orders or working with the wrong companies. And that time, that missed opportunity, that opportunity cost of spending a whole week on something that just was doomed from the start versus, you could have just sat there and played video games all week. You had the same net outcome, right? Figure out like, if you're contingency, you have the benefit of being able to just cut bait and just not work on it anymore, right? If you do engage, make sure you get in bed with the right people so that these searches will actually get filled. And again, we could talk about that at length, but I do think that's a component of productivity because recruiting is like notoriously inherently got a lot of waste in the day, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good to put it. There's a lot of wastage in the day, a lot. And a lot of it comes down to taking job orders that you shouldn't be working on, or working with candidates that you shouldn't be working on as well, doing stupid things. And I think a lot of recruiters, they're just glad to get the job to work on. And you have to get yourself, look, and this could be a whole other topic, just talking about ramping up your productivity by increasing your marketing output and your prospecting output. So then you get more opportunities to work positions, and then you can be selective with what you work with, right? So
you're top rating your funnel.
Time on the front end. Yeah, spend more time on the front end. You'll save time on the back end. So there's that. We can even talk about that as well. But I know we're starting to wrap up our show here. And so it's time to wrap up and do some promotions. But I just wanted to everybody who's watching, make sure to tune in next week. We have Ben Mina. Again, I'm about to ask if it's Mena or Mina. I'm pretty sure it's Mina, but I might be wrong.
I think it's Mina.
It might be.
It's Mena. He said Mena on his show.
It could be Maina.
It might be
M-A-Y. Or Mena.
It might be
It's one
Mena.
of the three. Mena, or
But
Mena.
Ben Mena from the Elite Recruiter podcast. Then we have, of course, Dan Fisk and Ryan Gagno with Empower Associates the week after. And then the 30th, November 30th, we have Steve Finkel, the man, the myth, the legend, the author of Breakthrough 2.0. Breakthrough Recruiting 2.0. He'll be on our show. And in fact, this will be, I think, his first ever interview online.
I think
his first. It's pretty big.
It is. He's going to do two.
So,
yeah.
Well, that's it. A couple things I want to mention here. If any of you guys need any sort of back office solutions, all right. So anybody, if you have temps, contractors, you have to fund payroll. I would recommend going to, and this is a blatant pitch for Neil's company, Back Office Staffing Solutions, also known as BOSS. You can go to backofficenow.com/staffing. And Neil also has a guide, which I believe is, where is it here? It is right over, I think I may not have a card for your guide, Neil. So I'll get that over next time. I can't find it, but go to backofficenow.com/staffing. And of course, for me, I actually, this week, I have a course called Recession Breaking. It's a recession proofing course for your firm and your practice. It is 50% off for the next few days. If anybody's interested in that, you can go to realdsp.me/RB for recession breaking, right? There's a 50% off sale on that. Get it for the next couple days. It's not going to last very long. And also Chris doesn't have anything to promote typically, just except for the next show, because you're out there in the trenches like these guys watching the show, recruiting, right? But is there anything that you want to add here towards the end?
Well, yeah. So as I alluded to, and we could talk about this more in the VA show and in subsequent shows, but I have been kind of quietly chugging along, also putting VAs to work for a lot of recruiters. I hadn't really been pushing that too hard. There's a partnership I entered into about 1.5 years ago, kind of leveraging some of my experience working with VAs, and a friend of mine who had an existing VA business that has supported a lot of e-commerce business, started expanding into other spaces. So
we've been working offline after the show how BOSS can help my partners. Will have a great need for that. I'd love to.
Yeah, I had been. Like the search business is at the end of the day, that's where I make my money. So that's where most of my attention is. But slowly but surely, been trying to add in some recruiters to the mix there.
Well, and
I'll have like a link to
payroll with people. Maybe we could talk double-edged partnership. Well, we'll talk. People don't have to hear how it works behind the scenes at the silo.
Don't need the sausage is made. But at any rate, in a coming show or two, I'll have a link to share to book something. But you can always also just shoot me a DM as well on LinkedIn or Facebook. They're called DMs these days, right? Or messages. I'm not up on the
just
lingo.
Slide into
my DMs.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what that was until probably the last year. Was that a thing up until the last year? I've heard it so much in the last year. I never heard that expression before.
A few years.
It's a really new thing, I suppose. But we have this hookup culture now where girls are showing off their b-holes on Instagram and to make money and like all this. It's so.
This is where we sign off.
This is where we sign off.
Yeah, great show. You have to bring up b-holes at the end of the show. Can we edit this out?
Of course. Got a little spice at the end. Got a little spice. All right, folks. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you all for watching, and hope this helps. Tune in next week for Ben Mena from the Elite Recruiter Podcast, and we'll see you then. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.